Stop. Just stop for a moment. Don't scroll. Because if this message reached you today, something may have already changed. Not tomorrow. Not next month. Right now. Out of countless videos, your eyes stopped here. Why? What made you pause at this exact moment? Most people would call it coincidence. But what if coincidence is only a word we use for connections we don't understand yet? What if something has been quietly reaching toward you for years, and today, you finally noticed it? Take one slow breath. Now ask yourself something. Have you ever walked into a place you've never visited, yet somehow it felt familiar? Have you ever met someone for the first time, but it felt as if you already knew them? Have you ever felt an unexplainable warning, ignored it, and later wished you had listened? Those moments are easy to dismiss, until they happen again, and again, and again. What if those feelings were never random? What if they were echoes, carried across generations, waiting for someone in your family to finally understand them? And what if that someone is you? If you're here, I want you to stay until the end, because something we're about to explore may completely change the way you look at yourself. Not because I'm asking you to believe anything blindly, but because the questions themselves refuse to disappear. Here's something that has fascinated scientists for decades. There is a strange phenomenon called quantum entanglement. Two particles become connected in such an unusual way that changing one seems connected to the other, even when they are separated by enormous distances. No, this doesn't automatically prove every spiritual belief, but it does reveal something deeply interesting. Reality may be connected in ways we still don't fully understand. And once that possibility enters your mind, another question quietly appears. If tiny particles can remain connected, what about memories? What about emotions? What about patterns that seem to repeat through entire bloodlines? Why does courage appear generation after generation in some families? Why do certain dreams keep returning? Why do gifts seem to awaken without anyone teaching them? Science is still searching. History has been whispering. And maybe your own life has been leaving clues all along. Look back for a moment. Think about the people who came before you, the ones whose names are remembered, and even the ones history forgot. Every victory, every sacrifice, every unanswered prayer, every lesson learned through pain, none of it simply disappeared. It became part of a chain that eventually led to you. Maybe you've spent years believing you were ordinary, trying to fit into places that never truly felt like home, questioning why you've always sensed there was something different about the way you see the world. Here's what almost nobody tells you. Sometimes the strongest inheritance isn't money. It isn't land. It isn't even appearance. Sometimes the greatest inheritance is potential that sleeps quietly until the right moment arrives. And maybe this moment found you because something inside you is finally ready to wake up. If that possibility speaks to you, type, "I am ready" in the comments. Not for me. For yourself. Because words have a strange way of reminding us what we've already decided deep inside. Now let me take you somewhere. Imagine an ancient hall hidden beneath a mountain. No maps. No doors. Only silence. Shelves stretch farther than your eyes can see. But there are no books. Instead, every shelf holds glowing threads of light. Each thread carries the experiences of one family line. Every choice, every act of courage, every fear overcome, every promise kept, every dream abandoned. Nothing is missing. Nothing is forgotten. You begin walking through the endless hall, and suddenly, one thread starts glowing brighter than all the others. It isn't calling everyone. It's calling you. And the moment your hand moves toward it, everything changes. The greatest power you inherit isn't in your DNA. It's in the part of your story that has been waiting for you to remember it. The moment your fingers move closer, the glowing thread begins to pulse. Slowly at first, then faster, almost as if it recognizes you before you recognize it. You hesitate. Your mind immediately searches for a logical explanation. This is only imagination. But your heart, it doesn't agree. Have you ever noticed something strange? Sometimes your mind asks for proof, while something deeper inside you already knows. That quiet feeling, that unexplained pull, that voice telling you to turn left instead of right, To call someone you haven't spoken to in years. To walk away from a place that suddenly feels wrong. Where does that come from? Most people silence it. Not because it's weak, but because life teaches us to trust noise more than stillness. Yet every generation has told stories about people who could sense danger before it arrived, dream about events before they happened, or feel connected to family members living miles away. Some called it instinct. Others called it prayer. Some called it coincidence. The names changed, but the experiences never disappeared. Now imagine something even more interesting. What if your ancestors weren't trying to leave you instructions written on paper? What if they left patterns instead? Patterns hidden inside the way you respond to life. Patterns hidden inside your courage, your compassion, even your fears. Think about your own family. Has anyone ever said, "You laugh exactly like your grandfather. You have your mother's determination"? Those words sound ordinary. But here's the question nobody asks. What else might have been passed down? Beyond what the eyes can see. Now stay with me, because this is where everything starts becoming more personal. Modern science has shown that experiences can sometimes influence future generations in surprising biological ways. Researchers continue exploring how stress, environment, and life experiences may leave effects that extend beyond a single lifetime. The full picture is still unfolding, but one thing is becoming harder to ignore. The past doesn't always stay in the past. Sometimes, it quietly travels forward, not as destiny, but as possibility. And here's what changes everything. If pain can echo across generations, could strength echo too? If fear can leave a mark, could wisdom leave one as well? If survival can be remembered, could courage also be remembered? Suddenly, the story isn't about being trapped by your family history. It's about discovering the gifts hidden inside it. Maybe every challenge you faced wasn't only testing you. Maybe it was revealing something your bloodline had been preparing you to carry. Take another slow breath. Close your eyes for just a second. Picture every generation before you standing behind your shoulders. Parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, faces you know, and countless faces you never will. Different lives, different struggles, different dreams. Yet every single one made one choice that mattered. They continued. Without every one of those choices, you wouldn't be here. Now ask yourself, what if your life isn't the end of that story? What if it's the chapter where something forgotten finally returns? But here's the truth. There is one story, almost erased by time, about a young woman who accidentally awakened something her entire family believed had vanished forever. At first, no one believed her, not even she believed herself, until one impossible night changed everything. And what happened next may completely change the way you think about the hidden connection between your past and your future. Your bloodline is not a prison built by the past. It is a bridge carrying unfinished strength into your future. The story began with a young woman named Izara. She lived an ordinary life. She worked, paid her bills, smiled when people expected her to smile. Nothing about her seemed unusual. At least, that's what everyone believed. But there was one thing she never told anyone. Ever since she was a child, she would dream about places she had never seen. An old stone bridge covered in morning mist. A giant tree standing alone in an endless field. A circle of glowing stars reflected in perfectly still water. The dreams always ended the same way. Someone standing in the distance, waiting, never speaking, only watching. For years she ignored them. They're just dreams, she told herself. Until one afternoon, while helping her grandmother clean an old wooden chest hidden in the attic, everything changed. Inside the chest were faded photographs, letters tied together with worn ribbon, and a small metal compass unlike anything Izara had ever seen. It looked ancient. Its surface was covered with symbols instead of directions. No north, no south, no east, no west. Just strange markings that seemed to shimmer whenever sunlight touched them. Her grandmother froze the moment she saw it. The color disappeared from her face. Without saying a word, she reached for the compass. But before she could touch it, the needle moved. Not toward a direction, toward Izara. The room became completely silent. Even the old clock on the wall seemed to stop ticking. Her grandmother whispered only one sentence. I prayed this day would never come. Izara laughed nervously. It's just an old compass. But her grandmother slowly shook her head. No, it has never pointed toward a place. It only points toward the one who is ready. Those words stayed with Izara long after she left the attic. That night, the dream returned. Only this time, she wasn't standing outside the stone bridge. She was walking across it. The mysterious figure was closer than ever before. Still silent. Still waiting. As she reached the center of the bridge, the stranger finally lifted a hand, not to greet her, but to reveal the very same compass glowing with golden light. Izara looked down at the one in her own hand. It was glowing too. At that exact moment, she woke up, breathing hard. The compass was lying on her bedside table, still warm. She was certain she had left it upstairs. She rushed back to the attic before sunrise. The wooden chest was open. The old letters were scattered across the floor, and hidden beneath them was a folded page no one had noticed before. Across the top, only 7 words were written. The last keeper awakens when the threads reunite. Izara had no idea what those words meant, but somewhere deep inside, she felt they had been waiting for her, long before she was born. Some inherit family names, a few inherit unfinished destinies. Izara couldn't stop thinking about the message. The last keeper awakens when the threads reunite. She read it again. And again, the words refused to leave her mind. She carried the folded page everywhere for the next few days, hoping that somehow it would begin to make sense. Instead, life became stranger. Small things started happening. Whenever she entered a room, old clocks that hadn't worked for years would suddenly tick for a few seconds. Streetlights flickered as she walked beneath them. Animals paused and quietly stared at her before continuing on their way. None of it lasted long, just enough to make her wonder if she was imagining everything. So she told no one, not even her grandmother. But one evening, as the sun disappeared behind the hills, her grandmother quietly knocked on her bedroom door. Without saying a word, she placed another envelope on the table. I hoped I would never have to give you this. Inside was an old family drawing, not a photograph, a hand-drawn family tree. Dozens of names stretched across the page. Some branches ended suddenly. Others continued for centuries. But one detail made Izara's heart race. Every few generations, one name had been circled in gold ink. Beside each circled name, the same symbol appeared, the exact symbol engraved on the mysterious compass. What does this mean? Izara whispered. Her grandmother took a long breath. Our family believed that every few generations, one person could sense what others could not. They weren't rulers. They weren't heroes. They were simply listeners. Listeners to what? Izara asked. Her grandmother looked toward the window instead of answering. As children, they often spoke about dreams that later came true. They sensed danger before anyone else. They found people everyone believed were lost. But they all shared one warning. They said the connection becomes strongest just before the world changes. Izara felt a chill. The world changes? Her grandmother slowly nodded. Every generation reaches a turning point. Most people never notice it, but the listeners always do. Silence filled the room. Then her grandmother said something Izara never expected. I was supposed to be the next listener. Izara looked up in surprise. But it never awakened in me. It skipped me. And now, she gently touched Izara's hand. It chose you. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Outside, a cold wind began moving through the trees. The compass resting on the table started glowing again. Not brightly, just enough to reveal something neither of them had seen before. Fine lines of light slowly spread across its surface, connecting every symbol together, like a web, or a map. But it wasn't pointing toward a place on Earth. It was pointing toward a mountain that appeared only in Izara's dreams. Her grandmother's voice became almost a whisper. I've spent my whole life hoping that mountain was only a story. She looked directly into Izara's eyes. But if the path has opened, it means someone else knows you're coming. Who? Her grandmother didn't answer, because at that exact moment, 3 slow knocks echoed from the front door. No one in the family was expecting visitors. The knocks came again, Slow. Calm. Certain. When Izara opened the door, no one was standing there. Only a small wooden box rested on the doorstep, and carved into its lid was the very same symbol from the compass. Inside the box, there was only one object, a black thread, still warm, as if someone had placed it there only seconds before. The moment you discover who you are, something else discovers you too. Izara stared at the black thread resting in the wooden box. It looked ordinary. No glow, no strange symbols, just a single piece of dark thread. The compass on the table spun wildly. Not once, not twice. It kept turning until the needle stopped, pointing directly at the thread. The room fell silent. Her grandmother's face turned pale. She whispered almost to herself, "They found you first." Izara's heart began to race. Who found me? But before her grandmother could answer, a loud crack echoed outside. The old oak tree in the yard had split down the middle. Even though there wasn't a single storm cloud in the sky, the wind stopped. The birds disappeared. The entire world felt as if it were holding its breath. Her grandmother slowly closed every curtain in the house. Then she locked every door. For the first time, Izara saw fear in her eyes. "There are stories our family never wrote down," she said quietly, "because some stories become more dangerous when people remember them." She picked up the black thread with trembling hands. "This isn't just thread. It's one piece of a chain connecting every keeper before you." Izara frowned. "Then why is it black?" Her grandmother looked at the thread for a long moment. "Because one connection was broken." Those words hit harder than anything she had heard before. "A keeper failed?" Her grandmother nodded. "Long ago, someone chose power instead of purpose. They tried to control the connection instead of protecting it. And when they did, the chain shattered. Since then, every generation has carried only fragments." Izara looked again at the glowing compass. "So this thread is one of those fragments?" "Yes. And if the fragments begin returning..." Her grandmother stopped speaking. She didn't need to finish. Izara already understood. Something was happening. Not only to her, but to the entire chain that stretched through generations. That night, she couldn't sleep. The black thread lay beside the compass. Around midnight, both objects began glowing together. Thin lines of golden light rose into the air. They didn't spread randomly. They formed the outline of a doorway. Beyond it, she could see the mountain from her dreams. Except this time, it wasn't empty. Hundreds of tiny lights climbed its path, like people carrying lanterns. At the summit, a single figure stood waiting. The same silent figure she had seen since childhood. Only now, its face was clear. Izara froze. The face wasn't a stranger's. It looked exactly like her. Before she could step closer, the doorway vanished. The room became dark again. The compass stopped glowing. The black thread fell still. But one sentence echoed in her mind, not spoken aloud, yet impossible to ignore. "You are not meeting your ancestor. You are meeting the version of yourself they were preparing you to become." Morning arrived. Nothing looked different. The house was quiet. The sky was clear. But Izara knew with absolute certainty. There was no turning back now. The path had opened. The fragments had begun to return. And somewhere beyond the mountain, the final truth about her bloodline was waiting. If she reached it, everything she believed about her family, about herself, and about the invisible connections that shape every human life, would change forever. Your ancestors didn't leave you their answers. They left you the courage to find your own. For a long time, Izara stood at her window, watching the first light of morning spread across the hills. Everything looked normal. Children laughed on their way to school. Neighbors waved to one another. Cars passed as they always had. The world hadn't changed. But she had. Once you begin seeing hidden patterns, it becomes impossible to pretend they aren't there. She looked at the compass one last time. It was completely still, almost as if it had finished asking questions, and was now waiting for her answer. Her grandmother quietly entered the room. Without speaking, she placed one hand on Izara's shoulder. "You don't have to follow this path." Izara looked toward the mountain in the distance. "What if I don't?" Her grandmother smiled sadly. And if I do? A long silence filled the room. Then you'll discover who you've always been. Those words settled deep inside her, not as pressure, but as freedom. She finally understood something that had been hiding beneath every strange event. The compass, the dreams, the glowing thread. None of them had forced her to become someone else. They had simply invited her to stop running from herself. Maybe that's the real message hidden inside every generation. Not that we're trapped by the past, but that we can learn from it. Not that our ancestors control our future, but that their courage, mistakes, love, and sacrifices become part of the foundation we build upon. And perhaps that's where the idea of quantum entanglement becomes so fascinating. It reminds us that reality can contain connections far more surprising than we once imagined. It doesn't prove ancient legends. It doesn't prove mystical powers. But it invites us to stay curious, to keep asking better questions, and to recognize that not everything meaningful can be measured the moment we experience it. Maybe the greatest inheritance isn't something supernatural at all. Maybe it's resilience passed from one generation to the next, hope surviving impossible times, kindness refusing to disappear, the courage to stand back up after every fall. Those are powers every family can awaken. Those are gifts every generation can strengthen. So before you leave, I want you to do something simple. Close your eyes for just a few seconds. Think of one person who came before you, someone whose choices helped make your life possible. You may know their name, or perhaps you never will. Quietly thank them. Then ask yourself one final question. What kind of strength will I leave for the generations that come after me? Because one day, someone you've never met may be standing where you are now, searching for hope, searching for direction, and the life you choose to live today may become the quiet light that guides them. If this story made you stop and think, leave a comment saying the chain continues. Like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who has ever felt there was something meaningful hidden inside their family story. Because sometimes, the greatest discovery isn't finding a secret buried in the past. It's realizing that you are the chapter your ancestors hoped someone would write. The strongest legacy is not what you inherit. It's what begins because you existed.